woman ululates, it is like the first whistle blow.
The Sudanese Arabic phrase Hagana Kamil, adapted in the documentary title, means we have full or equal rights and our rights are non-negotiable. Sudan continues to lurch from crisis to crisis, which can be traced back to December 2018, when then President Omar al-Bashir's government imposed emergency austerity measures to stave off economic collapse. Sudanese women and the youth have been at the forefront of the revolution and agitation for a democratic transition. The movement reached a climax in April 2019 when demonstrators occupied the square before the military's headquarters to demand that the army force the president out. Following the overthrow of al-Bashir, the Sudanese military and a coalition of civic groups, united under the Forces of Freedom and Change, FCC, established a transitional government to lead the country toward a democratic and civilian government. However, the transition has suffered multiple setbacks, including political unrest, rising economic instability, and a military coup on 25th October 2021 that dismantled the civilian institutions and overturned parts of the previous power-sharing arrangement, a huge blow to the hopes of democracy that flourished during the 2019 revolution. Since then, the Sudanese people have been demonstrating in the streets to bring an end to the military regime.
I am Mahasin Muhammad Ibrahim. I am 28 years old, and I am a mother of one boy called Nawaf. I was born in Kutum in northern Darfur, Al-Fashir, after which I came to Khartoum. And throughout that time, I was living in Khartoum and I left from Khartoum. While living in Khartoum, I was engaged in many civil society organizations. I was also a broadcaster at Nawaf Media. We tackled social and political issues. And immediately after the war, we stopped production. The company did not stop, but our program was stopped. It was called Baranda program. We were three ladies, and we would host guests, and we would discuss the current situation.
أنا إسراء الشيخ سعد. أنا من السودان.
I am Isra Sheikh Saad. I'm from Sudan. In my last period in Sudan, I used to live in Khartoum. I cannot say where exactly I'm from because I lived in many areas in Sudan from my childhood. We used to move from one area to the other because of my father's work, from Blue Nile, southern Kordofan. After that, I went to Red Sea State, where I went to study in Port Sudan. I was married, and I am married, and I started working in Khartoum. I did marine life in Red Sea State, and I started my political work from the age of 18. That was the Independent Student Congress in Red Sea State University, and I was one of the founders of that Congress.
My name is Sijud Al-Garrai. I am from Sudan, and I am a communications director. In Sudan, I was working with INGOs, things like Plan International, CARE, generally in the humanitarian field.
طيب أنا اسمي هديل جعفر. أنا بحب أعرف.
My name is Hadil Jafar. I love to introduce myself and very proud to introduce myself as a feminist. And of course, I am also a human rights defender. I am from Sudan.
My name is Umayma Amin Al-Mardi. I'm civil society activist. I'm working for a national NGO called National Sudanese Women Association, or NISWA. It is known as NISWA.
There's so many Sudanese women that I would want to speak about. I cannot say, for example, so or so, because simply stating, before the Sudanese revolution, I worked with a lot of great women, and I can say I'm very proud to have had the opportunity to work with them. But after the revolution, after the Sudanese revolution, we went out in the streets, and there were so many women, some very young women who are at the beginning of their life, and they were a model on how they were committed to the cause and the values of the revolution. But what I want to see in the other women and also the wider Sudanese society is not to look at women as second-class citizens. Quite the contrary, I want them to see us as equals, because without women in all the state structures, the work cannot go well.
أنا اسمي رابحة إسماعيل أنا من السودان.
My name is Rabha Ismail. I am from Sudan. I am from South Kordofan area, from Al Ubaid. I work in an organization called WERI. It's a national Sudanese organization that works on democratic transformation. Previously, Sudan was governed by a totalitarian dictatorship regime that did not give women and girls, the young women and girls, the opportunities to exercise any form of rights at the university level or secondary school. And so my work focuses on civic engagement and leadership skills. And my hope is that in 2050, there are young women who are in the struggle and who are committed to the struggle, and they're champions in the coming period. The young women who are holding banners representing values and demands that the society saw as difficult. The role of unpaid domestic work. Women, young women, they're not married, they're not mothers, but they were making these demands that this domestic work should be included into the laws of social welfare in the state, something that is recognized and has financial, commercial value. I'm a veterinary doctor and I'm also an activist on women issues. I work on so many things before the war. I dream that these women are remembered, the women who lost their lives while protecting their families from the impact of the war. I hope that we celebrate women who are doing researches and studies on the issues that are not so popular, like the environmental issues. I am I'tizaz Bakri Abdullah Osman from Northern Kordofan, from Al Ubaid. I am a university student studying laboratory technologies at Kordofan University. I am a civil activist and concerned on gender and feminist issues, and I identify as a feminist. In 2050, I hope to celebrate the young women who are currently part of the grassroots women groups, as well as the young women who are challenging all the societal restrictions and engaging in the humanitarian work through the emergency rooms, contributing to ending the suffering of all civilians through their work in these different initiatives, and also reduce the impact of the war.
It was women initiatives that started mobile clinics where they cared for pregnant women. They started campaigns for hygiene kits, bringing pads and sanitary things for periods for young girls. And so I think they are kind of unsung heroes. Nobody gives them credit, but they housed and fed and clothed thousands and thousands of people.
For instance, my neighbor, the housewife who's raising children, when she couldn't step out to join the demonstrations during the revolution, she opened her doors to protect the protesters.
One of these young women, my colleague Nisreen Sadiq, we worked together for more than 15 years. I think she is a leader She did a lot for Sudanese women. She's working among her colleagues, created a lot of networks among her colleagues in the university and after the graduation. And during the work, the field work in Niswa, she also show a lot of commitment to women agenda and issues. She is very high committed and holding a feminist vision for development of Sudanese women.
My name is Iman Abu Damer. I work as a peace expert. I am feminist, and I'm looking forward for the whole world empowering women, because women are the source of life. For 2015, I want to salute the old Kandakas in my country, who were the source and the fuel of the revolution. I want to reflect my respect to all women who opened their doors on the demonstration days for people to hide in and to defend them. Thank you. You did great. Thank you for that.
اللحظات الحقيقية اللي بحب أتذكرها أنا ممكن أخذها على
The
جزئين.
most memorable moments for me, I can divide them into two. The personal moments was my dreams to get a master's degree on peace building and conflict resolution. And so this was a beautiful moment in my life. The second, at the national level, was when the previous regime fell after a long revolution and demonstrations. This was a moment I will never forget, and I'm very proud of this moment because a big number of women, our victories and our struggles from September, the arrests, the violations that we faced. And so these moments are immortalized in my memory.
My favorite moment. I had a very tough year last year. So happy moments are far and few in between. But I think the moment I found out my niece and my nephew were okay and safe, because I haven't seen them since the war started, but I was ecstatic when I got a voice recording from them that they are okay, that they're safe, that they're taking care of each other. There was a network was cut off for months and months in their area. So that was one of the happiest moments.
أهم لحظة ممكن أشاركها هي لحظة
The most
اندلاع
important moment that I can share was the onset of the revolution. That moment is etched forever in my memory. It will never be forgotten. It embodied the bravery of the Sudanese men and women and their ability to create real change in the interest of their communities.
It's been a year since the power struggle between two branches of Sudan's armed forces exploded into full-scale conflict. The effects of 12 months of hostilities have been harrowing. The ongoing conflict in Sudan has had a devastating impact on women and girls, exacerbating the oppressive political, socio-economic condition of women and minoritized persons. As of 31st December 2023, according to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs Situation Report, Sudan is now the largest internal displacement crisis, globally hosting an estimated 9,500,000 internally displaced persons. The war exacerbated health and humanitarian crises, with the majority of hospitals out of service and approximately 11 million people, including 4 million acutely malnourished children and pregnant women urgently requiring health assistance. There are also reports of gross violations, including rape and targeted attacks against women human rights defenders.
طيب ثورة 2019 2019 كانت ثورة مختلفة شديد هي امتداد
The 2019 revolution was very different. It was an extension of previous struggles. In September 2013, there was a revolution, but it wasn't well organized. And it did not have the same numbers and attention as the 2019. So when the 2019 revolution happened, we had very many high expectations because all the Sudanese people were united on these the same messaging. My demands were also part and parcel of these demands and the demands of the revolution, and that is what motivated me to go out into the streets every day and wake up early every morning and ensure that I was present on the streets and in the front lines, because the women's demands are part and parcel of the demands of the revolution, and there is no revolution that can happen in Sudan without the demands of the women being part of its agenda. Unfortunately, on April 15, the war broke out. In most African societies, when a woman ululates, it is like the first whistle blow. We would on the streets also, we were so many women on the streets, but when it was time to take on leadership, we saw that the voices of women were very little in the decision-making positions compared to our numbers on the streets. And this is a result of the patriarchy in Sudan, and that we are women. We should not be political or economically capable, or second-class citizens. And this became a new challenge to us on how to ensure that we were in decision-making positions by 50-50. After that, of course, the revolution did not succeed, the transition did not succeed, the war broke out, and we went back to square one. 60% of the demonstrators were women, 50% were young people, and any revolution that has women and youth, we are bound to have high expectations. Expectation was for Sudan to go to a better period where freedom and justice and equality reigns. My hope was that we would live better, was that Sudan could hold all the people in their diversity. Sudan is diverse, is very diverse and very rich. Different cultural groups, religious groups, and a lot of diversity. And so the issue or the challenge has always been the management of that diversity. And so Sudan would have been better if there was a better way of managing the diversity. And so I said, finally, the time has come for us to learn and capitalize, maximize on our diversity. Instead of our diversity being a cause for tribal conflict, it would be the Sudan, the diversity that holds us all, that respects our diversity and our differences, and holds us in peace and security. And we could be among the countries that would be used as a reference on managing of diversity. So this was my hope.
There was so much hope. There was so much hope for restructure, for democracy. A lot of things changed. For me, I was working with Plan International on a campaign to end FGM. So when the new government came, that was signed into law, and that was a huge moment for us. It was like a 10-year campaign that amended. We were also pushing to change child marriage, to end child marriage. We didn't manage to get that, but we got so much advance. We got a chance to go on the media, like state-run media, and speak about topics like women's custody, women being able to get papers for their children, which was just unheard of in Sudan. A man had to get the papers like passports and schools. So if you have an issue with your husband or his family, you wouldn't be able to send your kids to school. You wouldn't be able to leave the country. So it hit close to home, the revolution for women, I think, For Sudanese women, it had much more than just good governance and democracy. It kind of had like an elevation of self. And that all climaxed in the fact that women came together so strongly. They were just women's marches that were so poignant and so clear. And we want equality in the law. We want equal pay. We want equal representation. And for the first time, it wasn't faced with opposition or mockery from the general public. They kind of like, well, they paid their dues. They have been protesting with us for the past year and a half. They opened all the kitchens in the sittings and in the resistance. And you'd see all these old women who have nothing, but they will put out a cooler and just a pile of bananas and oranges for all the people walking through. And so it was a great moment of solidarity. And it had so much hope. So when the coup happened, it was devastating. It was kind of like this years and years and years of work. We were waiting to like exhale, and then it just all crumbled. And I think the morale of the nation kind of just collapsed with it.
In 2019, our dreams were very big. Our dreams were, and our hopes was to establish a Sudanese state where all the citizens had equal rights, where we choose who should govern and we're able to hold them accountable, a unified army, a professional, an army that is representative of all the Sudanese people, that is able to execute its duties as stipulated in the constitution, and institutional reform, state building and development. Those were our aspirations in 2019, and we had hoped and expected to achieve that by our unity and our big aspirations. We thought that we would be able to achieve this and establish this peaceful and free and just country that we dream of. There is still hope for us to build and challenge the current situation that we're facing because of this war. But yes, we had very big dreams, especially for the women's movement. There are so many people who learned a lot from the revolution. We learned about laws. We were able to share experiences and knowledge, workshops, slogans on the streets. At that time, there was a restrictive space, but after the revolution, people were able to express themselves, especially during the transitional period. Our hopes were great, and they're still present. We still have these hopes in spite of the challenges we're facing. There was so much change on the status of women in Sudan at that time. There was more awareness on our rights, and the Sudanese society, both men and women, were united on changing Sudan for the better.
So then it went all downhill from October 25th. We all kind of expected a war to happen, to be honest. Everybody was speaking about it. We didn't think it was going to take this long. We're coming up on a year now. We thought it was going to be a war that is strong and quick, and that within a month they will negotiate and we'll come back to civilian rule. But, you know, so far we're still waiting. Negotiations and ongoing, ceasefire on and off. And meanwhile, we don't have any support from the international community. There is no aid going into Sudan. There is no enforcement of human rights. There is mass numbers of women being raped and put into sexual slavery, and just horrific things coming from the ground. And anybody who's reporting or shedding light on this is treated as a criminal. Journalists, lawyers, anybody who's advocating for women is being put in jails. So it's a really sad and scary situation, going from the hope that the revolution had to the reality we're living now.
يمكن يعني بعد الحرب
وبعد الثورة وبعد الحرب في مفاهيم كثيرة.
After the war and after the revolution, many concepts were changed. What I discovered is that we have a very strong weapon, which is the voice of the media. It is very easy to access, but we're not focusing on it. We can use it to express our issues in a way that can reach everyone across the world. Our revolution really was very impactful. I remember there was this country, I don't remember which exactly, but they also had a sit-in. They brought their mattresses to the street, they burnt the tires, and they used the Sudanese mentality in their revolution. And that speaks to the fact that our media echoed globally and what exactly women were doing, and it was really great. I also remember there are people who are trying to imitate the Sudanese ululation and the role of women, and there are also countries that also honored the icons, the female icons of the Sudanese revolution. And yes, there are many concepts that changed, but there are still some hurdles. After the war, it became very, very clear. During the revolution and the transitional government, which is a civilian government, but after the war, everything that was hidden became clear. Who was supporting the revolution, who was using the revolution to pass their own agenda, their own diabolical agenda. So after the war, for me personally and other women, it became very clear what we were facing and who our enemy was and who was advocating for us. From the first day of war, we started experiencing violations. I lived very close to the airport, and that was the first area that was targeted. It was the battlefield. For over 5 days, we were sleeping under our beds to protect ourselves from the bullets. And after that, we started this painful journey of refuge. We walked for a long distance, and then we found a safe space, and then we took a car and we went all the way to the South Sudan border. And there were so many people at the border. It was rainy season, so we again turned back and went to the border with Egypt, and we were not well received. And after that, we came to Uganda, and this is the only place where, to some extent, we feel that we're able to live and exist. I was part of that revolution, but I could never imagine the numbers of the Sudanese people, the magnitude of the revolution, young women and men, all the sectors of the Sudanese society. And so I felt like we are able, as Sudanese people, to create true change, changing the policies and everyday life. And yes, that time, we had very little capacity and lack of knowledge on governance, but we had the will to create change.
In my work from the revolution, when the revolution happened, I joined an NGO called Karama. It's a regional NGO that is main goal is to have more political involvement for women. So from 2020, I joined that NGO, and we were working tirelessly, trying to get a consensus for a women-led agenda to approach political parties with, saying that we can galvanize the women vote for you if you put this on the ballot. And so when the coup happened, that all crumbled. The offices were closed, they weren't allowed to work in Sudan anymore. And then the war came, and that just became a dream. It became a day-to-day struggle, from talking in these, hotel rooms and conference halls and traveling and meeting all Sudanese women from all walks of life, to just being worried about where are we going to get food. The stores around us have run out. The electricity was cut off. Getting water was a serious issue. So we wake up in the morning, we go queue in line for like 3 hours to get like 4 or 5 buckets of water that have to last us till tomorrow morning. Food, you have to go long distances. The big markets were kind of dangerous and scary because you find RSF soldiers and they are completely erratic and unpredictable. You don't know what they're doing. Most of them are teenagers, so it's quite an unsettling sight. From a country that was quite peaceful, there was not a lot of gunfire in Sudan. For the longest time, the sound of guns was associated with weddings. So then when the war broke out, the sound of gunfire was just associated with funerals. So you heard the gun go off, you knew somebody died. And then there was just a lot of like microphones from mosques saying so-and-so have lost their lives, the burial is at this time, so-and-so have lost their lives, or we found bodies and they're dead and we can't identify them. We're gonna bury them and hope later on their families can, have somewhere to mourn. So it's just such a contrast. And it happened in such a condensed time frame where survival was the main goal. So you had no time to process anything. You just went from, and then there was like bombardment and air sirens and strikes. And whenever the hit happens, you feel everything shaking, glass breaking, where you don't know where the hit took place, but you know there is a window somewhere that broke because you hear the shattering. And it just kind of like bombards your senses. So you're just always on edge, and you can't relax, you can't be comfortable, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
أنا أصلاً ما كنت متخيلة إنه العالم ممكن يكون
I did not expect the world to be run by interests. I saw this in the 2019 revolution. I saw the international interference and their attempts at aborting the revolution and how it has now resulted or ended in war. This war is not just by the two warring actors. There are international actors that have interests in Sudan that have tried by all means to abort the 2019 revolution. They did everything they could, and when they failed, through its agents in Sudan, they started the war. And that's why I know that the war is not just between these two warring parties. There are also international actors with very long hands who have caused the war in Sudan and producing militias. These countries have very big interests for Sudan to be destroyed and for the people to be scattered, to have no government. So it becomes easy for them to extract the resources in Sudan. The war changed a lot of things. We were stable, we had our families, we had our works, all our things, and in just a moment we lost all that. And we were first displaced, and now we are refugees. It has, put like a very dark screen in our faces. Everything that we work for is just lost like that.
أنا في اللحظة دي
This moment, my hope is for this war to end just now. I want it to stop forever because we have experienced enough wars. This is the second war I am experiencing. The first was in Darfur in 2003, and now this one. Even my son has experienced war. I don't want him to experience war again in 20 years' time. For how long will we continue being caught up in these cycles of violence? This war should stop now. I think there's so many things that Sudanese women are doing, especially the different women groups. The women at the moment are facing the worst time in their history. They're being killed, they're being raped. Sudanese women are facing the worst economic times, worst health situations. They're in fear, they're experiencing pain and suffering that is affecting them also psychologically. In spite of this, They are trying to overcome these difficult times that they're facing. And really, it is women who are able to propel the entire society. They're the ones who are planning what people will eat on that day. They're the ones who are thinking of solutions in these crises, and they're the most united unit, so that they could be able to reach safety with their children and their families. This inspired facing the worst type of challenges. So for us as women, we need solidarity, we need pressure, we need advocacy. Even not just for Sudanese women, but women of the continent of Africa and women of the world. Now there are women in refugee camps in Uganda, in Ethiopia, in South Sudan, in Kenya, and others in the neighboring countries. They are suffering the worst humanitarian situation a human being can experience.
My hope for Sudan is just that, for Sudan to be a democratic, equitable country that has respect for its citizens from all walks of lives, and for women to take their rightful place in the Sudanese society. And I think the way African women organizations can help is by shedding light on the plight of Sudanese women, on the atrocity they have suffered, and by helping incorporate Sudanese women in African organizations so there can be an exchange of experiences, and so they can learn from organizations like in Rwanda, for example, where women, have managed to have very tremendous political representation in their parliament. They're more than 60%. Places like Tanzania, where the president is a woman. Things like this in East Africa, I think, will help give the Sudanese women hope, will help gain them the skills necessary to step up to the plate when the time is right. And I think there is something to be said about the experience of African women, that their experience hits closer to home than the experience, let's say, of European women. So while Sudanese women might want a situation like it's in Scandinavian countries or whatnot, but it's so far from their reality. And those countries have been stable for, centuries. But I think something like Rwanda, for example, 1994 till now, 30 years, that's something doable. I think the pressures of Sudanese society left it so even the qualified women feel unworthy of public positions or public praise. They kind of put themselves in a corner before anybody else stops them. And I think that's a psychological barrier that African women can help Sudanese women with.
ايوه بنحلم انه السودان يبقى زي ما احنا كنا حلمنا بيوم لما طلعنا في الثوره.
As our aspirations have been since 2018, a unified, peaceful, free, and just country where all the Sudanese see themselves represented, and where they enjoy all their rights and freedoms and equality. And we as citizens enjoy our rights. It's a multi-partisan state. I hope that the African feminists are able to amplify our voices so that it reaches the world. We're in a state of war. We are facing a lot of violations, sexual, gender-based violence, social violences, high rates of rapes. Sudan is currently facing a state of famine. Every minute, at least 70 children die from the impact of the famine, starvation. I hope the African feminists are able to relay our voices to the world and the tragic situations that we're living and experiencing. I hope that they're able to support the Sudanese women in Kampala, psychosocial support, projects for economic development to raise their capacity, knowledge, and skills on the challenges, on their rights, through the various platforms, give them access to their media and their social media platforms, to use all their platforms to relay our voices to the world. Sudan is facing a true famine, and the world, I feel, is not listening to us. I feel it is like when you're in a dream and you're screaming, your voice is not heard. So this is the situation of Sudan at the moment. Even the media, the world, are not focusing on the Sudan issue. Not as much as they focus on the other issues. And yes, so we in Sudan are in solidarity with the Palestinian people and the situation in Ukraine, because we are all human beings. But I feel the world does not see us, or does not see us suffering, and does not see the suffering of Sudanese men and women. The death, the starvation, the rape, the worst types of violations. All the Sudanese men and women have lost everything they own. And so, for me, advocacy efforts can be tangible. We need advocacy, and we need solidarity, and we need pressure for the international community, to the regional community, and also to the warring parties, so that they could end the war. Because we are tired. We are tired. We as Sudanese are tired. Yeah. What we expect of the women's movement, be it in Africa or the whole world, is solidarity and collaborative work for Sudan. And solidarity for the women issues in Sudan, and to look at it as a Horn of Africa issue, as a Pan-African issue, and as a human issue. That's my hope. In the future, what I hope is for all the African countries to know who we are, and how to express our interests based on our aspirations, and not by what is dictated to us by others. Yes, we are Africans, and the Pan-African women's movement is not strong. There is something happening in one African country and the situation in Sudan, but we don't even know what's happening in the other countries. They don't know what's happening in Sudan. There needs to be sharing of experience and knowledge on the challenges and the problems we're facing, because I feel as a continent we have one issue, one problem. And if we're able to identify our problem as the African continent, our voice will be louder, the solidarity will be bigger, and change is more possible, and the things that we aspire for can be done in a better way. And so the women's solidarity is something that I agree with, and I know we're all Africans and we have to be together.
The war on women and women's bodies and rights in Sudan precedes the current war, which has damaged the fabric of life, society, and the women's movement. We recognize the painful and despicable experiences women, young women, girls, and many other marginalized persons are facing within Sudan or outside Sudan. We also recognize the incredible agency of Sudanese women, and we celebrate it. They have shown courage in participating in and leading a peaceful revolution. We want this documentary to convey to the world the strength, resilience, and determination of Sudanese women in the face of oppression and conflict, and map out what we can do together.